All right. Hello and welcome to the Philosophy of Fitness podcast, episode number 6. My name is Haley. I'm going to be your host today and every single day that you are tuning in. Guys, we have another guest appearing on the show today, my friend Jack Kensil. He is the owner and founder of Two Wolves Performance. He has a really interesting background of what led him to where he is now regarding his training and his mentoring that he does. And we had a really awesome conversation about all kinds of different things, meditation, tips for your mindset, your inner game, as I like to call it. And it was a really great conversation and really insightful. And I hope that you all kind of take away something from what we spoke about. So without further ado, we will get into that right now. Jack Kensil, welcome. How's it going?
Awesome.
Feeling good?
So pumped to be here. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. Guest number 2. So that's super exciting. Episode number 6. So if you want to just tell everyone about yourself, give everyone a little bit of a background, what your deal is, what you do.
Yeah, my name is Jack Kensil. I run a performance training company / lacrosse training company called Two Wolves Performance. And I'm based up in Westchester, but I train on Long Island also. And I'm starting to travel a lot more and go to different states to train and work with teams. Primarily, I work with individuals and small groups. And basically, I've been a performance coach for 3-4 years now. And I worked at a few performance centers, and that's a whole story in itself. But I've been running Two Wolves Performance for just about 2 years now, and I love everything about it. I think it has a unique approach to sports and life, and the story of two wolves, the tale of two wolves is intertwined into all of our sessions. And we always talk about the concept of life, or a challenging thought for the day, a meditation for the day, reflection for about 5 minutes of each session. And I think, my job as a coach is to be a molder of young men and women, and to not just improve their ability as athletes, but also improve or accelerate their wisdom on life, and help guide them through the struggles, and be there for them for the trials and tribulations and success and failure and the whole thing. So I love what I'm doing. It's getting harder and busier now, and everything's kind of loosening up a little bit. So everyone's just excited to get outside again. And I love what I do, and it doesn't really feel like work, so I'm really grateful for that. And I'm grateful for the opportunity I have. So I feel like I'm living in my purpose for the most part every day, trying to.
Love that. That is so powerful. Something I was thinking about that as you were saying it, what is the background behind the name Two Wolves? How did you come to choose that name?
So there's a story of the tale of two wolves, and it was told to me at a point in my life when I was in a very dark place. And a mentor of mine, I was watching him speak, and he told this story, and it was like the first time I had cried in like years. And I spoke to him afterwards and asked him to tell me more about it. And till this day, we're good friends. And basically what it is the tale of two wolves is a old Native American tale from the Cherokee tribe. And this grandson, the chief of the tribe, is walking in the woods with his grandfather is walking with his grandson. And they're walking through the woods, and they stop, and the grandfather says, "Grandson, I have a fight going on within me, and it's between two wolves. And you and everyone else in this world has it going on too." And the grandson kind of ponders it, and the grandfather says, "One wolf represents evil. It represents envy, jealousy, hatred, anger, fear, lust, dishonesty. And the other wolf represents all that is good: faith, love, trust, honesty, compassion, empathy, joy, truth." And grandson, they keep walking, and the grandson kind of looks around, and he looks up and he says, "Well, grandfather, which wolf wins?" And he looks down and he says, "The one you feed." And to me, I've always felt that in my head and in myself that it's really right and wrong. And I've as a kid, I was always that kind of kid. If you gave me too much rope, I might have found some trouble, and but I always knew what was right and wrong, and I had that. I still have it going on in my head, and I think everybody does. It's sometimes what I say is it doesn't always feel good to do the right thing, to let go of someone that you care about, to have to do something that's hard, to tell the truth about something that is going to anger somebody, is going to upset somebody, but it's the truth. And what I was told is, I was talking to a friend one time, and they asked me if I was honest about something. I said, yeah, I was pretty honest. And he said, there's no such thing as pretty honest. There's either honest or not. He said, there's no such thing as a 70% truth,
Yeah.
So, and that resonated with me. And I think, every day there's little tiny decisions where it's like, I could either do it the easy way or the right way, and so that's kind of where it comes from. And it's very pertinent in my life. And it's kind of what we talk about all the time. We talk about everything with our athletes. I talk about, just doing the next right thing and being of service to others, and, taking care of yourself so you can take care of others, or, not comparing yourself to others. I think a lot of young athletes today struggle with, they see their friends, or they're, committing to schools, or they see, younger kids seeing their highlights posted, or, they're achieving all these things, and they get jealous, or they get angry, they get, upset that they're not where they want to be. And, those kinds of things we talk about, that, you're only competing against the version of you from yesterday, and you're not them. Your goals and dreams are not them. You have and to stand up for your goals and dreams, I know for me, when I was a young athlete, by the time I got to college, I played Division I lacrosse, and I didn't even like lacrosse anymore, because I wasn't playing it for me. I was playing it to meet the expectations that I felt I had to meet for everybody else but me. All my friends were playing Division I lacrosse, and I was, burned out from playing every day, and I didn't even like it. And it was really hard, because it's 6-7 hours a day in college, and it was a hard thing to overcome at first. So I think it's a long answer, but I think it's important that the name means a lot to me. The name of it, because it is pertinent in what we do every day. So
That's awesome. I love how the name kind of encompasses a more holistic approach to team sports in general. And it kind of lines up with what I've done with this podcast too, is that there's a whole physical side of what you're doing, but it's so much more than that. It's what you're bringing to the table mentally, and how you're viewing things within yourself and also the world around you. So that's awesome. I love the name, and I love the message behind it. That's really cool.
And you're absolutely right about what you just said. You can only accomplish so much physically.
Yeah.
But I think we are so much more capable than what we think, and you think of the greatest athletes in the world, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Kobe Bryant, they all had mental performance coaches. They all had mindset coaches. And like the word you use, inner game, I love that term.
Yeah.
I think it's perfect. I think it's like, it is a game. It is all a game up here. And what you tell yourself is, what you believe in yourself, and the limitations that we put on ourselves are self-imposed most of the time,
Yeah.
So I think I love that. I love kind of analyzing what's going through my head and thinking about why I'm thinking it, and should I be thinking this? Well, who planted this here? And I enjoy it. And sometimes it's hard. I think we've talked about how it's hard to look inward, but that's where all the answers are.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I kind of think of it too sometimes. I've told people it's almost like a potted plant. So if you have two plants in your mind, kind of like the two wolves, whichever one you're feeding more and paying more attention to and putting more energy into, that's the one that's going to grow more. And so, like you said, looking inward, that's where you find the answers. That's where you find out too which one you're feeding more.
Yeah, and have you ever heard of the study? You use the word energy. Have you ever heard of the study about I think it was a classroom teacher that put 2 plants in her classroom for her students, and basically one plant represented, you could only say nice things to it. It had the same amount of lighting, watered at the same time, but you could only say nice things like, I love you, I care about you, you look beautiful. And then the other one, you could only say negative things to. And like the negative one died. And I think that's amazing. You know,
it's
like,
so cool to see that kind of,
it's
all
like
of
the
that
most
stuff.
simple, profound evidence.
It is. It's cool because it is kind of evidence. And there were experiments too with, I think it was snowflakes or water droplets, where they had certain frequencies to kind of go down a whole nother rabbit hole of everything in this universe resonates at a certain frequency. And 528 hertz is supposedly the frequency of love, healing, DNA repair. And when you place the water droplets on a speaker at that frequency, they formed sacred geometry. Whereas if you played other frequencies, they were all scattered and kind of jumbled about. So that's another way to kind of show the evidence of some of this stuff that may seem a little esoteric to some people.
No, I always say,
it's like, real.
I see it every day when like my sink is full and I turn on the garbage disposal and it vibrates. So I'm like, oh, look at it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like all lined up perfectly. You know, it's like, it doesn't make sense.
It's cool to see. It's very cool to see. So you're doing great with the lacrosse coaching now, killing it. So what exactly, I know we have a similar background too, because I left the corporate world for pursuing this path. And I know that you did too. So I was kind of curious of what led you to make that career switch, and what was kind of the aha moment for you that your purpose and passion weren't on that track.
Yeah. It's kind of I'll try to give you the short version, but after college, I worked for in sports television at NBC Sports, and at first I loved it. I was kind of just thrown into it, sink or swim, and you know, I did a good job, but truthfully, like, I had no film background. I didn't know if it was something I wanted to do. You know, and I was there for a few years. I got to do some amazing things. I got to work at Olympics. I got to go to Ryder Cups, and I got to do. I worked on Notre Dame football, and I worked, you know, got to do some amazing things. But I was working 100-hour weeks. You know, I remember going to an Olympics in Sochi, Russia, and for like 30 days. And in 30 days, I saw one event. You know, like I didn't even leave the production truck really. So I didn't even really get to appreciate it much. And I felt like I was just withering, you know, like I had no social life, no balance in my life. You know, and truthfully, like, I wasn't that good at it. You know, my coworkers were a lot smarter than me to begin with, and my friends, and they were better than me at it, you know? So when I left, it was kind of like mutual. It wasn't, it was kind of like, I think I'm going to go, okay. You know, so, but you know, it was an incredible experience of like what that world is like. And, you know, I have no ill will towards that world. It's a hard, job to do, and it's demanding, and, it's very, competitive in a sense, like it's live television. So everyone's just yelling at each other, you know, for the most part it's live television, but, you know, I was good at a few things. I was good at producing, you know, but you know, don't put me on a graphics operating job, because I couldn't do graphics. Like, I couldn't do it. So I wasn't a well-rounded, I guess, in television. But you know, and then I hit a low period where I didn't know what I wanted to do. I went to school for communications, and I minored in psychology. And you know, looking back, I wish I had majored in that. I think I had this. It wasn't real, but I had this idea that I had to do what my father did. My father's worked in the NFL for 40 years. His father worked in the NFL for 40 years. My brother works in the NFL. So I felt like I had to do something like that. They never put that expectation on me, but I just felt like that's what I had to do. And, you know, and I realized, you know, afterwards, like, that's not really the path I wanted to do. And I was, you know, basically sitting on my buddy's couch one day, and we were like looking on Indeed, and I was like, this is so dumb. I can't believe I'm doing this. And he's like, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, I don't know, something in sports. And he was like, here. And he found this like director of operations for the Sports Performance Center in Elmsford, New York. And it's like near White Plains kind of. And he was like, call him. And he's like, I'm going to submit your resume. And I'm like, all right. So, he's like, call him. I'm like, I'll call him tomorrow. And he's like, call him now. And next thing I know, my phone rings and it's the owner calling me like, hey, can you come in for an interview? And he's like, and I'm like, when? He's like, right now. I'm like, yeah. So like I go down there and like an hour later I have a job. Now like,
oh my God.
Director of operations was a fancy name for like janitor at the time. You know, like I swept the floors, I cleaned the bathrooms, I vacuumed the turf for the other trainers to, you know, do the training. But I'll tell you, like, I was the best janitor that place has ever seen. Nobody swept floors better than I did. Nobody cleaned the turf better than I did. And what I did was I watched the trainers and I took courses in the background, you know, because I thought maybe it's something I wanted to do. And soon enough, a trainer left and I, you know, started taking youth clients, and another trainer left, and I took every staff development class I could. And sooner than later, it was just me and another trainer running the show. And then I got offered an opportunity to work with some professional athletes at primarily a baseball performance training center up in Mahopac, where I am now. And I was offered to be a director of multi-sport development. So I was able to create football, basketball, and lacrosse and speed training programs into this new facility. And it was awesome because it challenged me to, I was in charge all of a sudden. I, you know, had a significant role. I was a head speed trainer, and I really enjoyed it. And unfortunately, we had a couple floods, and some weird stuff happened. And basically, one day I was just told, tomorrow we're going to close, we're going to shut down because this lawsuit, the floods, and the health board. I don't know I truly don't know the whole story, but so you don't have a job tomorrow. And at that time I had about 12 clients, and you know, weekly clients. And fortunately I had my best friend, James Brady. He runs a quarterback training business, and that's a very specific business to be able to, you know, run as a career, because it's just quarterbacks. And he's very successful. He's one of the best coaches in the country. And I leaned on him. I was like, do you think I could do this? Like, you know, he kind of set the example for me, and he's been a mentor to me. And so I went for it. And at that time I had no idea what I was doing. I've never taken a business course. I've never, you know, I don't know if I can like kind of curse on here, but I know two words. Don't be a dick and help people. You know, like that's what I know, you know. And so, but I have a lot of friends that are business guys, and I would say to them, like, what do I need to do? What, you know, and I told you, like, one say, oh, you got to form an LLC. I didn't even know what it stood for, but I knew I needed it. So I did it, you know, and then I had to get domain names. I had to, you know, and one thing happened at a time. And all of a sudden, you know, here I am. I never thought I'd be coaching girls lacrosse ever. But I'm coaching varsity girls lacrosse team, an extremely successful one. And I love doing it. I work with the best players in the country across, you know, the whole East Coast now. And I'm really grateful. You know, I think I'm a good lacrosse coach. I think I know what I'm doing, but I also approach every day as if I don't know anything. You know, I'm constantly learning and studying new habits and new methodologies, and, you know, asking other coaches, picking other coaches' brains. And I call it's a Bruce Lee term. It's called the white belt mentality. You know, he's a quadruple black belt, but he says the reason he's so successful is because he approaches every day as if he's a white belt. And that's what I try to do. And I think that's allowed me to, you know, not only connect with these athletes on a personal level in the terms of, like, I try to relate to them and be a friend, you know, more than a coach, but also, you know, not try to push only my way on them, you know, kind of not pretend that I know everything, but, you know, provide them with the best of what I know right now, you know, and that might change tonight. But I'm going to give you the best of what I know, you know, and if you have another way, I want to hear it. I want to hear from you. I want the athletes to debate me in questions, and, you know, because you might say, hey, Coach Petro from Johns Hopkins, you know, taught me this way. And I might be like, he's right. That's a better way. We're going to go with that, you know? So, and I'm not afraid to, you know, admit that. So I think my whole path to where I am now has been just a constant journey of learning, and just, like, you know, wanting to improve and with no real sense of an end result, but just other than learning and trying to get better. And as long as I'm enjoying the process, I don't really think about what's next because it just happens. So.
Yeah. Wow. I love the white belt analogy of kind of always keeping yourself in check, because something I say a lot is I know that I still don't know a lot, and I'm always still trying to learn in so many different ways. And it doesn't matter who you are. You could be Einstein, you could be anyone. Everybody can still learn something from someone else. So I love that approach. And also too, just seeing that somebody else got out of the rat race. I always love seeing someone kind of tap into their passion and purpose. And it seems like you feel like you're really tapping into that now, which is cool.
Yeah, I really do. I think about it every day, how like I used to go to bed, dreading the next day of work, dreading waking up. And now I struggle to fall asleep because I'm so excited for the next day of work. And I think like that is, I think if you get to that point where you can't sleep because you're so excited to go to work, you're probably on the right path.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. That's so cool. It's so inspiring to see, where you are now and everything you've done. And something you had mentioned the other day was kind of flipping a little bit of a switch here. You said something about the power of negative thinking that I think is something that's really interesting that a lot of people would resonate with right now. So do you want to kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So over the quarantine, we couldn't play sports, and our lacrosse seasons were at least postponed for the most part and later canceled. But, all the teams were still having workouts online and, film studies and, staying in touch. My team, we were doing it 3 days a week. But this local varsity boys team asked me to speak to present to their players. And before me were like some of the most brilliant minds in lacrosse, or professional players that are, just really knowledgeable and, a wealth of information. And I was like, oh man, what am I going to present to these guys about? And their coach said, we'd love to hear something about the mental piece. And, I was thinking about it, and what I had been trying to avoid saying to my team, my girls varsity team, was it's hard for something that's never resonated with me is when someone just tells me to stay positive, because, as a kid, it's like, oh, I just tore my ACL and you want me to be positive, or, my senior season is canceled, because of coronavirus. You want me to just stay positive? I don't think you can just say, flip a switch and be like, oh, I'm positive now, because someone told me to be. I think it depends on your habits and routines and what you think about, but it requires training but I didn't want to try to train them in meditation and, breath work, or like I said, that's like AP chemistry for high school kids. And if someone tried to tell me how to do that stuff, I would have looked at them like, dude, I'm not meditating, But at the time, now it's really saves my life every day. But so what I chose to talk about was I'm a big I listen to a ton of podcasts, and I listened to this podcast by this, I believe he's a psychology PhD. He's an author, a speaker. His name's Trevor Mawad, and he did this study on the power of negative thinking. And I loved it because instead of telling these kids to be positive, I wanted to present them with the alternative and help them to understand that negative thinking is real and it's more powerful than positive thinking. So this study, basically what they found was when you think a negative thought in your head, it's 10 times more powerful than when you think a negative thought in your head, it's 4 to 7 times more powerful than a positive thought. So, and then when you speak negativity out loud, it's 10 times more powerful. So if you were to speak a negative thought out loud, you thought it, which is 4 to 7 times more powerful, and then you spoke it out loud, which makes it 40 to 70% more powerful than saying something positive out loud. So what I explained to them was that's the alternative. And what I suggested as a rule on the team is just no talking negatively out loud. Just no complaining, no bad mouthing coaches, teammates, complaining about practice or anything like that. We can't teach them how to meditate and, regulate their emotions and all that kind of stuff, but we cannot make it worse. We cannot have one guy complaining and bad mouthing their team and leads to another guy and another guy, and eventually you have a crack in the framework of your culture. And the kids loved it. I presented them with some stories, and I can go into those also, of kind of evidence of that. But what it is that negative thought, when you think about it, when you're sitting in your, sitting alone, and I know for me, I start telling myself stories that don't exist. If I'm alone too long and I have nothing to do, or, my phone isn't ringing for some reason, I just start telling myself stories. And it affects me a lot more negatively when I think like that than when I'm sitting there thinking about all the great things in my life. Like, the emotions are a lot stronger when I'm thinking negatively. I'm a lot more sad or upset or, angry than I am like joyful and like grateful and everything when I'm thinking positively. It's just a stronger pull. And I think the power of negativity is real. And instead of trying to tell people to stay positive, present them with the alternative. And I, as a kid, I needed proof. I always needed like evidence. Okay, tell me how you know that. So real quick, I'll tell you one story of Bill Buckner in the 1986 World Series. He was a Gold Glove first baseman for the Red Sox, and 12 days before the World Series, he was asked, what's the dream here, for the Red Sox, and he said, well, the dream would to win the World Series, but the nightmare would to be to lose the World Series on a game-winning run with the ball going through my legs. 12 days later, that exact same thing happened. Ball went through his legs and they lost the World Series. Now, did he make that happen? No, but what they suggest is that it's a subconscious plant in the back of your mind. And when that situation presents itself, there's a millisecond or two that you freeze because your subconscious says, oh my God, here it is. And you freeze, and it's from the glove, being at your ankles to the ground is about a couple milliseconds, and the ball slides under. And, I think that 40 to 70% is actually just increasing the probability or possibility of it happening. It's not making it happen, but it's increasing the probability. And then, there's another example of a more extreme example of there was this engineer, a mechanic, and he was back in about 30 years ago, he was hired to fix a refrigerator boxcar on a train. And so he goes to the back to the boxcar, and I guess, it wasn't working. So he goes back there and he locks himself in. So he's locked in a refrigerator boxcar, and he thinks, oh, I'm going to freeze to death. So he's, pacing around, he's trying to stay warm, and all of a sudden, like, he grabs a paper and pen, because as humans, what our job is to observe and report. We observe how we're feeling, and then we acknowledge it. That's why people ask, how are you doing? You're observing how you're feeling and reporting it. And he started writing how he was feeling. He said, I'm getting colder. I feel my breath is slowing down. My heart rate is slowing down. I'm about to fall asleep. And then he finally says, these may be my last words. A few hours later, people find him in the refrigerated boxcar. They open the door and they check the thermostat, and it says 56 degrees. So wow. The theory is that he actually talked his body into dying or freezing to death. And there were a bunch of other examples, but I think what I've learned is through meditation and through the power of thinking in general, we're able to do things with our body just by thinking them. We can heal injuries faster by moving cells to that injury, with our mind. We can create heat, and we can create, oxygen in our body and relieve emotions and stuck energy by inviting more oxygen into our body and reaching those spots in our body, that we hold, negative anxiety, trauma, grief, loss, in those pockets of our body. That's why, we always talk about, I feel it in my gut. I feel it, tightness in my chest. Sometimes, we think we have injuries, and really it's actually like an emotional trauma that's like stored in your hip, and it feels like hip tightness, but really it's like just stuck energy. So, that's kind of power of negative thinking. And, I think it's a really cool concept to understand for people, rather than be positive, because it's just hard to just do that.
Yeah. It's unrealistic too to expect someone to be positive all the time, because it's so much easier said than done. And I like this approach too, because I haven't really encountered someone that's kind of approached it this way, but I feel like for a lot of people, it's something that'll resonate, especially right now. And I know for me too, whenever I'm, like you said, when you're alone and you're sitting with your thoughts, when I feel those, or when I'm thinking those negative thoughts, there's such a strong emotion that's attached to those. Like when I get really anxious, I feel that so strongly, as opposed to when I'm feeling really happy. Like I feel that feeling, but I don't feel it as strongly as I do that negative emotion if I'm dwelling on something so much and saying, oh, well, what if this, what if that? So if you could even like showcase to someone that they have the power to control that just a little bit by alleviating some of the negative thinking, not always saying they have to be positive all the time, I think that's really powerful.
Right. Or it's as simple as like when you do have a negative thought, like think of the opposite. Like what's the opposite positive thought? Just acknowledge it. So you kind of just at least cancel it out,
Yeah.
And you mentioned like it's impossible to be positive all the time. Nobody's positive all the time. Everyone's going to have bad days. Everyone's going to have, peaks and valleys. I think for me, the thing I used to be like this, my emotions used to be like this. And I think now they're a little more carved, and, I don't get too high or too low. But a quote that I heard is, most happy people that I know understand that they're not always going to be happy. And that resonated with me a lot, in the sense that like most of the time I'm happy. Most of the time I'm in a good place, but there are definitely days where I'm not. We're going to lose people. We're going to lose, friends. We're going to lose, things in our life. Things are going to happen that, are sad, and they're going to hurt, and it's going to cause pain. And, we have to work through them. We have to face them and, process. And, another friend taught me that bad days build better days. And I think that's a good one too. So.
Yeah, that is a good one, because like you said, it's not always going to be sunshine and daisies. And I think a big part of it too is coming to a place of accepting that things are going to happen that are out of your control, but you always have the control of how you respond to things and how you internalize things. So yeah.
True. It took me a long time to learn acceptance.
Yeah. That's a huge thing. And even becoming self-aware of like your thought patterns.
Right.
Yeah.
Acceptance is a tough one. It's always been for me. I still have a hard time with it, but I've gotten so much better of accepting that like I'm powerless over a lot of things. And I'm not always going to be in control of things, and kind of let go and, let God or the universe or, work its way out. So.
Yeah. So kind of to segue into another little rabbit hole, I know that you're really into meditation, and I always love asking people about their experience with meditation and what it does for them. So if you want to kind of share a little bit of that, love to hear.
Yeah, it's something I never thought I'd do. Like I said, when I was younger, if someone tried to, get me to meditate, I'd call you like you're Looney Tune. I'm not meditating, my mom, she does, my mom, she does spinning, she does, she does all these different methods, and she, and I always used to call them voodoo. I'd be like, Mom, that's voodoo, and now like I'm the most voodoo person in our house, and meditation has probably been the number one improvement I've ever made in my life. I started doing it at a time when I was in a very dark place, and it was really like I had nothing else worked. My way didn't work. I kept failing over and over, and it was like a really hard thing for me. And I started meditating and praying. Really, I didn't even know what I was praying to. I didn't feel like I could meditate. And some of my mentors and people in my life were like, just being quiet and just sitting with yourself is meditating. And there's no wrong way to do it. There's I was like, I can't turn my brain off. And they're like, don't, what are you thinking of? Acknowledge what you're thinking about, like it's telling you something. So I started, doing that, and I started just practicing. I started YouTubing guided meditations. I started, and all of a sudden they got longer, and I started like, they would be over and I'd stay in the meditation, and I'd, start to be able to visualize things. And I started to try different kinds of meditations, like astral projection and all these different kinds, and transcendental meditation. And all of a sudden, like, my life starts changing. Good things started happening to me. I never thought, that was going to happen. I was like, all this bad things started happening to me, and I realized, like, these things are not happening to me; they're happening for me. And I learned that through meditation. And it's bizarre because the person I am today, I never thought that I would be meditating, and I would be doing things like breath work, and I would be, I wouldn't say that I'm religious. I would say that I'm spiritual, but I have a higher power that I, am connected with, and I know is real, and connected to energy, and I feel it, and I'm aware of my surroundings. I think even just like 5 years ago, I think about the way I thought and the way I saw the world and the way I perceive myself as like a different person. So I would say that meditation has been the number one game changer in all of that, or at least the Kickstarter in all of that. So.
Yeah. I love that you said things happen for me rather than to me. That's something that's so powerful, because that's something I've experienced too, is kind of learning to, I used to be stuck in a mindset too of, oh my gosh, why is this happening to me? Why am I experiencing this? Why am I not doing this and that, whatever? And when you take a step back and kind of realize there's something to be learned from every experience, even if it's something you would maybe label as negative, there's always something that we can learn from it. And there's also something I wanted to ask you too, because you mentioned astral projection. Have you had any of those experiences?
Yeah, I have. I don't do it that much anymore. I had this like one really like crazy experience with it, where like I actually like had like I was so scared, and it was like so crazy to me that I actually stopped meditating for like maybe like 6 months after it.
Whoa.
I could tell you about it. I
want to hear.
all the time. I meditate more now than ever, but basically I was practicing astral projection. It was like a suggestion on YouTube one day, and I didn't even know what it was. And so I started doing it, and it's like, you can't really do it unless that is a part of meditation. Like, to actually do, you have to practice, because it's an out of body experience. You leave your physical body with your astral body or your spirit body. And so I've been practicing it, and I was kind of getting it, but I realized like now that I was more visualizing my body leaving out of body. I was more picturing it. I wasn't actually doing it. And then one time I just ran into this one meditation where, like, I don't know if it was the sound effects or like the way it was being spoken to me or what, where my mind was at the time. But this like sound of like, they had this like sound of like a wind tunnel, and it was like preparing you to leave your body, and it was going and I left my body, but I got like stuck, and I could like see the other side of like this different dimension. But it was like, it was beautiful, but it was like kind of blurry, and like it wouldn't like let me see it until I like truly left my body, like left my physical body, and I could feel like my soul like above myself. But like, it was like this tug of war, and basically what it was telling me was like, you can't see this until you're willing to truly let go. And I like had this like fear of like, I couldn't let go, I couldn't like trust it, like, and ended up opening my eyes, and I was like sweating, and I was like, oh my God, like, because it proved to me like there's something else out there, and there's other places and dimensions, and they're beautiful, but it also taught me like something inside of me is not dealt with, because I'm not able to trust or let go, enough, where, or I have some fear that, I need to address, because I couldn't do it. And it got me away from that. I haven't really done it since then. So that's one meditation where like, I didn't really know what I was doing. And all of a sudden, like this thing happened. And, usually with that, like, I think you have like a teacher or like an instructor, but, I just went for it. But, it's amazing. Any kind of meditation is powerful. And I think what the most important thing is you find what works for you, and the more you do it, the more you get from it, the more benefits you get from it. And just to touch on, we talked about, I think for me, one of the biggest mindset or inner game switches you can say is that these things are not happening to me, that they're happening for me. But the other thing is, when you go through your daily life, one of the things I always preach about, whether we're at practice, whether we're training, whether we're at the gym, whether we're, doing something that's hard, I tell them, look, guys, we don't have to do this. We get to do this, and that's the other, side of that those are the two things that I think if we can win that inner game, and those are two huge ones that, have been beneficial to me.
Yeah, I love flipping around that mindset of how you interpret things. But to go back to the astral projection, I've always been way too afraid to even try it. And I've been curious about it, but I'm like, oh no, I'm too scared. Because I've had some strange experiences with like lucid dreaming, sleep paralysis, stuff like that. And I've had dreams where I have shadow people in the corner and I'm too afraid to even like acknowledge that too. So I've had some weird stuff with that. But it's something that I'm definitely curious about even more so now.
I haven't had like sleep paralysis. I do lucid dream sometimes. I used to do it all the time. And I love that, being able to kind of control what's going on.
So cool.
And know that you're dreaming, but like you're like, oh, but I'm still asleep. And you can kind of,
it's like a video game. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, and it's like, and then you even know like you're kind of waking up and you're like, no.
Yeah.
But so yeah.
Yeah, it's cool stuff.
I think with meditation, you just start simple. Start with a guided meditation of a body scan and just notice how you feel afterwards. Or if you're feeling anxious, do a guided meditation on releasing anxiety or letting go or forgiveness or, healing, and just listen and breathe.
Yeah. I remember in high school, there was a theology class that I took because I went to a Catholic high school.
So did I.
Yeah. So they had us, one of my teachers, Mrs. Omani, I'll never forget, she had us meditate in class for 5 minutes. And at that time, it was the most uncomfortable thing to me. I was just sitting there crisscross applesauce in the corner like, oh, this is so weird. It's quiet. Why am I thinking this? Why am I, thinking about this movie I watched 2 days ago, thinking about what shoes I want to wear tomorrow. And I think something important is that it's uncomfortable at first. At least it was for me. To just sit with your thoughts and like sit with yourself is really kind of an awkward thing. And it takes a little while to get used to. So guided meditations are great for that. 2
things. What really stood out to me is that you use the words crisscross applesauce, which like I have such a problem with, because like all the girls that I train always say that, and I'm like, it's sitting Indian style, or it's sitting pretzel style, like, and they always say crisscross applesauce. It's like this like inside joke with like a bunch of.
That's so funny.
So that stood out, but also I think meditation requires you to look inward, and it requires you to look at yourself, and I think that's the problem that revolves around the stigma of why meditation is, voodoo, or, like the way I used to view it. But in reality, it's like people are afraid to look at themselves. People are afraid to look inward and find something that they don't like about themselves, or acknowledge something that they need to be better at. And they're fearful. And really, it's they're afraid to be vulnerable and honest with themselves. So they choose to, project negativity or, hate onto something that, is hugely beneficial for people. I'm very passionate about that because I was one of those people, but I'm on the other side now, where I realize how wrong I was about meditation, and it was that I was afraid to look inward because there are a lot of things I didn't like about myself, and when I did, a lot of times it was hard because it told me a lot of things about myself that, I didn't want to look at. But I think what also meditation does is it puts you in a direction of working through it. It also coaches you how to get through it. and how to work through it. So I really like, that point.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, it kind of, to go off of that a little, I think sometimes, or most of the time, people are afraid of what they don't understand, or there is a fear of the unknown. And I think that meditation and diving so deeply inward is a huge unknown for a lot of people, and it's scary. So like you said, guided meditations are a great place to start, even if it's just like 5 minutes of breathing, anything to kind of also just put you in the present moment. Like I know for me, meditation is something that always brings me back to the present, because Alan Watts talks a lot about the eternal now, and how if we spend too much time dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, that takes away a lot of our happiness. And if we can just be fully present in this moment, that's when we can kind of take our power back. So, yeah.
I totally agree. I love what Alan Watts preaches, and I love when people teach me what he says, because whenever I read Alan Watts or I listen to him, like I don't feel smart enough. I can't, like the way he speaks is so eloquent and so like beautiful, but also very like intelligent. And it's like, I'm just not smart enough to try to figure it out. So, but there's it's like I need the cliff notes sometimes.
No, I feel that way too. He's very heady, philosophical.
Yeah.
He's one you have to read over a couple times to really understand.
Yeah. If you're not present when you're reading Alan Watts, you're not going to figure out what he's talking about.
Legit though. Yeah, that's awesome about all the meditation stuff. And you mentioned something too about how you do, I don't know what the word is for it, but you take cold showers, like really cold showers. If you want to explain how that kind of ties into your being present.
Yeah. So cold shower or cold exposure is something that, one, it forces you to be present, because it puts you into a fight or flight mode where you can only be present in that moment. But also it's in terms of discipline and the things that it teaches, is like, it sucks. I've never taken a cold shower that I enjoy. It sucks every time, but that's part of why I do it. It's like one of the things I talk about every day is like, do one thing a day that sucks, that you don't want to do. And you're going to learn discipline, and you're going to get a lot better at doing the things you don't want to do, because they make you better. But it also, improves your immune system in the morning. It wakes you up. It immediately, activates your body and your central nervous system. So that's when I do it. I don't do it every day. I try to, but there's definitely days where I wimp out, and there's definitely days where I have every intention of doing it for 30 seconds, and I get to like 6, and I'm like, not today. But when I do it, I feel good about it. And I'm like, damn, that sucked. But I just improved a lot of things, by doing it. And I think for me, it forces me to be present in that moment. I've always struggled to find the present moment. And it's like, if that's the extreme thing I need to do to start my day to be present, then I'm going to do that, because I know that I'm a much more nice person to be around, not only for other people, but also myself, when I'm present and I'm not projecting into the future or, tripping on the past. So cold exposure, it's also part of my breath work that I've initiated in my life recently over the last few months. I have a breathwork instructor who's also Coach Brady. He's my best friend. He's my breathwork instructor. He's a quarterback coach. He's my business mentor. But
he's your go-to guy.
He really is. I mean, like, I live on my own, and sometimes I get lonely. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? He's like, come to Long Beach. I'm like, all right. And breathwork basically allows us to invite oxygen into our body. It's a healing form of work, and it's healing. It improves your immune system. It activates all of the cells in your body. It alkalines your body. It works with breath retention. The other day I was able to hold my breath for up to 3 minutes, and like,
whoa,
couldn't hold my breath for 40 seconds. And now it's, I can do it for 3 minutes. And,
wow.
that kind of presence, being able to be still for 3 minutes and not even realize that you're holding your breath. But it's also had so much benefits to me in terms of like healing old wounds and healing grief and trauma and releasing anxiety and letting go and forgiveness and compassion for myself. And it has all those, and all those benefits. So the amazing thing is, like, just like meditation, people hear the word breath work. And they're like, breath work, and I'm like, yes, breath work. Like, nothing in this world works nothing living in this world works without breathing, without oxygen, and it's the one thing that we need. Without it, nothing else works. So why not trust it like you trust, your feet being on the ground, so it's just another area that, I've added to my life that works for me.
Yeah. It's so cool too.
I'll teach
like,
you one day.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to learn.
I'll have James teach you, but I'll do it with you.
Yeah, no, I'm down.
Group is apparently really cool. I haven't done it yet, but I
what is
really
it?
Look forward to like group breath work.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of like, when people meditate on the same thing, the power of that thought or the power of that intention is like multiplied.
Oh, yeah.
So it's the same thing with breath work. The frequency and energy is multiplied when, more than one person's doing it together.
Yeah.
So I think, I haven't done it yet, but I'm really excited to.
Yeah, that would be cool. I always love seeing too how, how you said how people, why don't they trust it in the same way they trust their feet being on the ground? I know for me, when I am really good with meditating consistently for a long time, I see my resting heart rate drop like 10 points, however you say it. And that's just one way that I can, if I ever kind of lose sight of it, which I have during this whole situation, I've kind of stopped or, whatever. When I look back at that, I'm like, okay, this is a tangible change. Like, this isn't just, like you said, a voodoo kind of thing. It has real physical benefits that you can see, that you can feel and experience.
It really does. I mean, to me, these things, I wouldn't do them if I didn't know they worked. If I didn't, the word you used was feel. It's very easy to feel that when you change or introduce a winning habit into your life, or, you introduce something new into your life, and all of a sudden you're feeling better, and you think about like, well, what am I doing differently? And you realize like, oh, I'm meditating, or, oh, I'm doing breath work, or, oh, I'm, going for a run every day. And it's like, and you feel better. It's like, okay, this is working.
Yeah.
And then you see things like resting heart rate. And for me, it's like, I'm not flipping people off. I haven't flipped somebody off on the highway for cutting me off in years. Like I don't, I let them go. It's like, I don't, someone cuts me off, my heart doesn't increase. I don't get angry. I'm just like, go ahead,
Yeah.
So, and that's a result of these kind of practices that I introduced. I don't get too, high or too low. And, I try to accept that I can't control everything, and people can't change anybody, can't, force anybody to behave a certain way. You can't, make somebody do something. You can't make things happen. You can't, so.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier when you realize those things.
Acceptance is huge. Like that is probably the biggest thing of all, right?
Yeah, I think when you live from a place of acceptance, you're able to, like you said before, respond, with a clear mind of like, I may not have wanted it to be this way. And I know how my irrational mind wants me to act, and lash out and be angry and upset and say something I shouldn't say. And, then you have your rational mind or the good wolf says like, no, take a step back and analyze the situation and realize like what's going on and respond in a healthy way. And like I said in the beginning, that, doing the right thing doesn't always feel good, but it's still the right thing. And at the end of the day, it's going to feel better, eventually. It may not feel good in the moment, but you'll feel good about it eventually.
Yeah, for sure. And I think acceptance too helps with being less reactionary of the things that happen to us, because it's so easy to get stuck in that rut of something bad happens, you instantly lash out, or you're instantly upset, you're instantly angry or sad. Or when you kind of take the time to go inward, it helps you to accept things as they come to you and recognize that, yes, you do have the control over how you respond to things. It's really empowering in a way.
It really is, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of times where, I immediately want to react, and I take a step back and I handle a situation that I used to handle so poorly, and I handle it really well and in a mature and respectful, healthy manner. And I, after it, I'm like, good job, man. You would not have done that,
Yeah,
years
A
ago.
for the day.
And it's like, that's a win for the day.
Yeah.
And
Small little steps.
Exactly. Every small victory is the biggest. I always say to my athletes that the little things are the big things. And the most successful people in the world, whether it's in sports and music and writing or whatever it is, the difference is that they understand that it's the little things that make them great, and it's the little things that they do, because everyone does the big things. Everyone does the big things, but the greatest on earth don't miss a day of doing the little things, because they know that's what makes them great.
Yeah. And that's a part of discipline too, keeping
100%.
yourself accountable with those little things.
100%. And I think for anybody, listening, it's important. What I always say is like, I don't do it every day. I don't win every day in terms of like, there's days that I don't work out when I should. There's days that I take shortcuts, and there's days that I don't do the right thing when I should, but I just try to do better the next day. And I just try to, be a little more consistent than I am inconsistent. And eventually, like, you just get a little more consistent. And eventually you're just consistent, where it just becomes a part of your daily life, and it's not a struggle anymore. So I think it's always important that I acknowledge that with people. It's like, I don't do anything perfectly, and I don't, do this every day. I try to, but if I do, if I do a few of these things right every day, I'm probably in a pretty good place. So.
Yeah. And to kind of have some grace with yourself too, right? I know for me, I'm always the one that puts the most pressure on myself sometimes of I need to do this, I need to work out, I need to get this done. And sometimes it's okay to take that pressure off of yourself and just accept if there's a day that it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. And it's hard. It's been hard for me to accept that. But not every day is going to be a win, like you said.
I have a few things that if I do them every day, that's a win. Or if I do, there's a couple things that like I try to figure out that if I just do one or two of these things, like I didn't lose today, but there are days where I'm, kind of win. There are days where I really win. There are days like, rarely do I just straight up lose where I do nothing. But, even if it's like a matter of like, I'm so upset or so angry about something, like just forcing myself to smile, that's enough for that day. Because for those few moments, like scientifically, by forcing ourselves to smile, if we just smile, we feel better. It's just in our DNA that if we smile, it will feel better. So like, even when you don't want to, you force it for that 2 seconds, you're going to feel better. And sometimes if the pain is great enough, you'll take it, so winning those little small victories and knowing, when to use them is huge. But you're not going to win them every time. So that's all right. I still struggle with that. I beat myself up all the time. I always think I'm not doing enough, but at the same time, like if people ask me why I'm successful at what I do, I will straight up say like, because nobody will outwork me. And I firmly believe that, but there are days where like I'm sitting around, I'm like, I'm not doing enough. Meanwhile, like I just worked 16 hours and just like literally couldn't squeeze another minute in a day, so being, not giving yourself shortcuts, but also realizing like, and acknowledging that like, no, I really am doing the best I can right now. So.
Yeah, there's a fine line between the two, holding yourself accountable and making sure that you're doing the most you can, but also, like I said, having some grace with yourself and realizing it's okay sometimes to not be 100% all the time.
Yep. I think like going back to consistency, there's three things that if someone asks me like what separates you, from other coaches or trainers or something, and I say like, well, maybe you work harder than me, maybe you work smarter than me. I'm not the most intelligent person. I don't prioritize and probably organize things as well as others. I know I probably don't, but you will not try your best to work hard and smart for as long as I will. I will try to do that every day, and that's, I think the difference is like the consistency of it is the most important thing.
Yeah, definitely. Consistency is key. I say that all the time. It's huge. Yeah. So kind of segueing a little bit, what would you say? I mean, we've talked so much about consistency and holding yourself accountable. What would you say is your biggest tip right now to kids that are in school that maybe aren't a part of their sports team anymore because of everything that's happened? What would your biggest tip of advice be for kind of navigating that?
The first thing I would say is I would want to connect with the seniors, because I still feel terrible for my seniors. The girls on my team was a group of seniors that most coaches, never get. I mean, they were the best group of leaders and seniors, and the maturity level of them was just incredible. And throughout the quarantine, they showed up to every virtual workout when they didn't have to. Their senior year, season's over. They didn't have to show up. They could have mailed it in, but they showed up because they cared about everybody below them. And, I'm sure a lot of seniors across the country are doing that. And I think the biggest lesson for them is to realize that they are going to leave a legacy of like leading a generation when it was one of the hardest times for sports. And they were the people that the people below them looked up to for that guidance. And, they learned acceptance. They learned controlling what you can control. They learned being there for the people that look up to them, being in a position of leadership, and those traits will carry them through their life. So that's one thing I think is important to address to them. And I think for, the rest of the players and them also is, it's hard to work towards something or a goal that you don't know if you're going to get an opportunity to reach. Well, most schools across the country and programs were every 2 weeks being postponed, and they, it wasn't canceled right away. So it's really hard to be motivated to work towards something that you don't know if you're going to get an opportunity to have, or you don't know what it looks like. It's hard to work towards your goal. It's not established. It's hard to find motivation to work towards something when you don't even know when you're going to get an opportunity to do it. And a lot of players are still in that. They don't know if they're going to have summer, seasons. They don't know if they're football players are thinking about it, and fall sport players are not sure if what their fall season is going to look like. So it's hard to be motivated, and I get that. I think for me, the biggest piece of advice I can have, and I can only really speak on my experience and what works for me, but I know it works for a lot of people, is creating a structure and a routine in your life. I always performed better when I had routine and structure in my life. And I always found it interesting that when I was playing a sport, my grades were always better than when I wasn't playing a sport. I would have a lot more time for homework and stuff, but I was getting worse grades. And it was because I had structure. So I was expected to do things at certain points of the day. So using tools like plan, if you're not working right now, or you're, you don't have team practices, you don't really have much to do, because kids don't have responsibilities like adults. And my biggest concern for, my players and all the athletes I work with was, they don't have responsibilities like adults, where they have work, they have to pay bills, they have to, they have jobs every day. These kids have school and sports, and both of them were taken away from them. So like one of the things I was telling my varsity girls, we didn't know like what was going on in the beginning. I was like, don't go hang out in boys' basements. Don't go do nothing. Don't go, like, I was like trying to like keep them safe and like try to like, keep them like with something to do. And, so I think having routine and structure is really important for them. And just, if you have to make it up, make it up. For me, like I try to write down my plan for tomorrow the night before, where it's like, for me, it has to be like almost every hour in a sense. It never really goes as planned, but at least like I have a plan for what I'd like my day to look like, and I start operating on a schedule. Just makes it a lot more productive and a lot more comfortable. I think for me, like I get anxious and like uncomfortable when I don't know what to do, or when I, there's a lot of things I could do, but I don't know where to start, so, if they're still in that time, I know things are opening up a little bit, but if, you are still in that time, where you don't have much to do, find a hobby, find something you love to do. I talk about all the time, like find something you love and do it every day for an hour, whether that's playing sports, whether that's playing guitar or piano or writing music or, solving puzzles or, doing, drawing and creating art, whatever it is for you, like you should find an hour a day to do that for yourself. So, and I would just say, ask yourself, what does the best version of myself look like? And why wouldn't I want to be that person? And if you just ask yourself that, like, what you need to do to become that best version of yourself. And if you ask a simple question like that, it's like, well, what would the best version of myself do today? Who wouldn't want to be the best version of themselves? To me, that's motivation.
Yeah, definitely.
I think there's a difference between motivation and inspiration. Sometimes I think motivation is temporary, and sometimes it could be crap, but if you're inspired by something fuels you and burns a fire like in your soul, that's long-term kind of stuff.
Yeah. If you're really passionate about something, it's not going to just go away overnight. It's not fleeting, Right. And I think structure too is a big part of accountability, because if you have a sense of structure, then you have a way to hold yourself accountable. And I know for me, this sounds really silly, but something I've done now during this whole situation is making my bed every day. Like every to-do list, the first thing says, make bed. And that's my first little thing that I cross off my list. And there's people that have talked about this. There's a Navy SEAL that went into detail about the 10 benefits of making your bed every day. And it does set you on a course for success for the day, because that's one little small victory, like we talked about. That's one little thing you've already done. So now you're already setting yourself up. And it doesn't happen every day. You
wake up and you win the first thing of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
And I always start with like, don't hit the snooze button.
Yeah.
You don't hit the snooze button and then you make your bed, like you've already got 2 wins before you even gotten dressed.
Yeah.
And you're way more likely to continue those positive little habits. And like the analogy I use is like, you do enough of that, like eventually you're going to end up in your kitchen doing dishes. Like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
So it's absolutely right. It's always starts with that. Win the morning and you'll win the day.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
It definitely does. And something else you said that you do something at night the day before. What did you say you do? You write a list?
I write down a plan for the next day. So like if today's Wednesday, like before I go to bed, I'll write down Thursday and I'll write down my plan for Thursday.
I think that's a great tip, because something that I've learned is people always kind of say you never want to go to bed angry. And that's something that I really believe in. So I always kind of think that however you're feeling emotionally and energetically or vibrationally before you go to bed is going to translate over to the next day. So if you can find ways to do something before you go to bed that relaxes you and puts you in a place of ease and kind of eliminates any anxiety, that's really huge. And for me right now, it sounds like a grandma thing, but I have like bedtime tea every night. And that's like my thing that I do. Every night I have my cup of bedtime tea. Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So
it's simple. It's the reason I don't watch horror stories or horror movies, because I know I'm going to have nightmares.
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't want to bring that energy into my head before I go to bed,
Yeah.
So, it's 100% true. What you're thinking about is what you're going to dream about and what you're, going to feel like, in the morning. You wake up and you have a good dream, you're way more likely to, start the day good.
Yeah. Or you wake up and you have a night terror and you wake up sweating like whoa.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's no bueno.
that. So,
Yeah.
What you put into your mind is really important.
Yeah, definitely. And it kind of goes back to the idea of what you consume, not just food wise, right? But what you're consuming in terms of the conversations you're having with the people around you, what you're watching, what you're reading. That is all making you up. That's what
Yes.
I think.
And who you're surrounding yourself with. One of my favorite analogies is like you are the culmination of the 5 people you surround yourself most with. And it's one of the most true things I've ever heard, because everything we do is from influence. And what are we most influenced by? The people around us. So, we have to be really careful about, who we surround ourselves with and what quality of people that we're surrounding ourselves with, because we are going to become influenced by them, and over time behave like them, even if we don't, agree with it. But if that's the only thing that we're hearing and the only people we're surrounding ourselves with, we're going to be influenced by it. One of the things I tell the athletes is, show me your friends and I'll tell you your future, and that's something that I've learned is, make sure that you're hanging out with the winners, and you'll be a winner. You might be the biggest loser on the planet. You surround yourself with 5 real winners, you're going to become a winner. It's true.
Yeah. It totally is. It all adds up. That's my kind of takeaway of it, and obviously yours too. So, any other tips that you'd have for anyone right now? Staying motivated.
I think people need to think about what they can learn from all this. I think every single person should be coming out of this quarantine in the state of our world right now. I think humanity should be learning from this, and we should all rise. There's so much good that can come out of this. It's really hard in the moment, but anything great is difficult and requires work and requires effort and accountability and responsibility. And I think there's a ton of lessons that can be learned right now that could really change not just ourselves, but change the world if we choose to look and we choose to find those silver linings and find those lessons. And I think no matter who you are, your life was changed during quarantine in some way. And no matter what that looks like for you, it's a great opportunity to look inward and find out about yourself and rethink things, address things that you couldn't address, mend relationships that you've always wanted to. It's a perfect time to heal, and to learn and to love and to do the things you've always wanted to do, and told yourself you never had time. Everybody had a little more time during quarantine.
Yeah.
So I think there's still some time left to do all these things. And I don't think that it's ever not the time to practice these things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that right now people are waking up in a big way to a lot of things across the board. And I think that this is a learning experience for a lot of people and a chance for people to dive inward and to kind of question what we've been led to believe and just kind of examine ourselves a little bit and hopefully learn. And like you said, use this as a time of healing. Even though the world might be in a state of chaos right now, you can still have the power to go inward.
Yeah. And I think, the biggest thing that helps me is when I get in my own head or I start, thinking about, the wrong things, or I start getting down on myself. I've found that getting out of my own self and getting into others is the biggest thing that helps. It's the easiest way to feel better is helping somebody else. It's funny how it works, but I think we're all on this earth to serve each other and to be of service to one another. And I think that is the one thing I know will always make you feel better is by helping somebody else. It could be a text, it could be a call, it could be, hey, you need help with that, or, whatever it is, you're going to feel good. And people want to be asked. People want to help. If you need help, ask, because people want to help. I know for me, like when people ask for my help, it means that they think I'm reliable. It means that they think like I'm worthy of, being of service, that I can help them. And I value that, so don't be afraid to ask, and ask how you can help. Sometimes all it takes is, like, for some people, it's just knowing that someone's there if they need them. They may not take them at the moment, but knowing that they're there, is enough. So whatever that looks like, there's no reason not to go for it. It only helps. It only feels good.
Yeah, that's so true. Little things like that go such a long way,
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty much it on my end, unless you had anything else you wanted to say, where people can find you, where they can see what you're up to.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram or Facebook. On Instagram, it's at 2wolvesperformance_, at 2wolves_performance, and Facebook, 2wolvesperformance, and 2wolvesperformance.com. You can reach out, let me know how I can be of service. Let me know if you guys have any feedback. But I hope I had an impact on one person at least. If I can help one person today, or that they learned from either of us, I think that's a win. So I think what's important, the last message I'd say is to focus on, if everybody could focus on what they could do to improve their little section of the world. Our oath at 2wolves Performance, and I'll end on this, because our section of the world is the lacrosse community. Our oath is, for the sports community, is because of the jerseys we wear, we have the opportunity and responsibility to change our little section of the world. Be the best you, not just for the betterment of yourself, but for the betterment of all those around you. And I think if everybody just does what they can in their little community, we'll live in a really great world one day. So that's all I got.
Yeah, I love that. Again, it's the small steps. It's the little things that add up to big change. I totally believe that. So that's pretty much all I have on my end. Thank you so much for coming on.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for doing this. And I'll talk to you soon. I'm sure I'll see you soon.
Yeah, sounds good.